How many sales YouTube videos have you watched in the last year? How many free courses have you gone through? How many paid programs have you even invested in? Probably a lot. And if you haven't, this video is not for you. So for those of you who that is the case, why is your income in the same place as it was a year ago? Or maybe even your income's up, but your savings, your investments are still in the same place as they were last year. What most people don't understand is that there is a massive difference between trying to get better and actually getting better and doing it in a sustainable way. And what I've seen across the entire industry is that genuinely nobody understands how to actually practice sales, because practicing is not just taking more calls. It's not just reviewing your recordings. That is what everybody is doing. It's not role playing, for God's sakes. That is exactly what everybody's doing. And that is exactly why everyone is still getting the same results. Inconsistent income, offers die, you start over, you never actually make the money that you know you're capable of. Or at least you make decent money, but then it's like a fucking roller coaster. It goes up and down every single month, offer to offer. Now here's what I know to be true. Everything in life comes down to mastery. And mastering sales is no different than mastering a sport or an instrument. And I'll give you a case in point. Now, if you didn't know, I swam competitively for 15 years. I also mastered piano. I mastered opera singing. What I actually mastered was the skill of mastering skills. And that's exactly what I'm going to teach you how to apply to your sales career in this video. I'm going to break down step by step how to actually practice sales the right way so that in the next 3 months, you make more progress than you tried to make in the last 2, 3, even 5 years of your sales career. Now, to be clear, if you take notes and implement what is in this video, this will be one of the most important things that you watch this year as a salesperson. So let's get into it.
This is probably something that some of you guys have thought about before, if I had to guess, just based off your answers. Why are some salespeople doing really, really well, and why do they improve quite a bit and quite a bit more quickly, while other salespeople just kind of plateau, even though they put in the same amount of hours of work? All right. So the answer is about practicing smarter. Most people practice, just like I kind of polled you guys, by simply taking more calls and hoping to improve through experience alone. If you think of like teaching a kid to swim, it's just throw them in the pool, let them figure it out. That is basically how we're going about it right now. That's how most salespeople go about practicing. So it's completely normal. Most people do it. It's not a big deal. However, like if you really want to grow quickly, you can't just do that, right? Because experience without structured improvement is just mindless repetition. You are reinforcing bad habits just as often as you are reinforcing good habits, if not more often, by just doing experience. Because think about it this way. How many times do you get the same objection on every single call throughout your day? Like looking over the past month, did you get the same objection on every call for the entire 30 days? Like, did you only ever get a money objection and nothing else? Did you ever get like I want to go and look at some competitors and nothing else? Did you ever get a situation where a prospect was in the exact same situation as every other prospect for the entire month? Like it's ridiculous. It's impossible because everybody's different. Every call is going to be different. Every human is different. And there's not just one human on these calls, there's two, sometimes more. So things are going to be different every single time. And so that's why it's really hard to practice just with experience. So you have to remove variables is what this is about. So the biggest difference between people who really succeed and people who don't is mostly in how they practice. And that's what we're going to cover today. So there's an actual term for this. It's called deliberate practice. This guy named Dr. Anders Ericsson basically came up with this idea, and it goes through 4 particular steps. Right. First one is focused attention on specific skills, not just practicing everything at once. So when you're on calls, just learning and growing through experience, that's literally the opposite. It's practicing everything at once, right? So strike number 1. Number 2 is immediate feedback on that performance. So if you do a call and then you review it, that is immediate feedback on that performance. But if you're just taking 8 calls a day and not reviewing every single one, then like You're not really getting a ton of feedback other than whether the deal closed or not. And that's not necessarily the most accurate feedback, right? Targeted adjustments based on the feedback, shocker. If the only feedback you get is that it closed or that it didn't, then like it's not very good feedback. It's not very specific, which means making adjustments off the back of it really isn't going to work because like your data itself is already skewed. The fourth one is progressive challenge. So this is continuously pushing beyond comfort. This is like you go to the gym, you lift, 200 pounds on bench, and then you get stronger, then you lift 215. Then you get stronger, then you do 230, so on and so forth. All right. So when applying this to sales, these elements obviously produce a dramatic improvements in a fraction of the time. So just a bit of background, when you practice deliberately, you're changing neural pathways through a process called myelination. This is basically a substance that forms around your neural pathways when you do focused repetition, which will make your skills more automatic and more natural. If you've ever heard of like deepening your neural pathways, your neural trenches or anything like that, this is what that actually is. It's not like, neurons are digging trenches into your brain. This is really what's going on. It's this sheath, if you will, around your neurons and around your pathways that dictate the turns that, the electricity takes through your brain and what fires off, right? Literally just this one thing, just reflecting, structured reflection, improved results by 23% when compared to just simple repetition. All right. Just like that one small thing. And there's a ton of that in here. So getting more neurological benefit from each hour that they practice. So step number one, select a specific micro skill. So you don't just want to practice sales calls in general. Good little analogy there. But choose a specific part of the call. All right. Whether it be your opening 30 seconds, whether it be your objection handling of, it's too expensive, whether it be asking for the close, whether it be probing and clarifying, whether it be the emotional portion of the call, whatever it might be. But the goal is to have a narrow focus, right? These micro skills. You're going to see improvements a lot more quickly. There's a bunch of stuff that goes on with that we can come back to. But step two is then setting goals, shocker. But just set some sort of goal that's specific and observable. You're going to maintain eye contact a certain amount of time. I want to get rid of my filler words. I want to be able to handle anything that comes up during this sort of objection. I want to ask at least 3 probing and clarifying questions for each qualifying question that I ask, whatever it may be. And you write that down before you start practicing, right? So you pick something to practice. You set a goal for the practice session. And then step number 3 is creating a feedback loop. All right. Use your phone or your computer to record your practice sessions. One of the greatest things about being in remote sales is that it's so easy to record things. If you think about any other job in life, there's very few opportunities for those people to actually get to record themselves during their performance. Very few. So it's a blessing. Use it. Obviously, when you're reviewing, focus specifically on your micro skill and your goal. Be specific in your notes, and then just make one small adjustment at a time. And then step number 4 is implementing this targeted repetition. Script out the improved version if you're rewording things, if you need to add inflections, if you need to add, body language, whatever it might be. Practice the new version, record again and compare to the original. And then once you get this new version, you want to repeat it generally 20 to 30 times. So those are the sweet spots there. 10 to 15 times when you're practicing. Once you get the version that you approve of, you do it 20, 30 times. All right. All these common pitfalls, you don't want to be practicing too broadly without a specific focus. You want to actually track your improvements. What doesn't get tracked, what isn't measured, doesn't get managed. Peter Drucker, practicing inconsistently, and then lacking proper feedback mechanisms. All right. You can create a practice journal. This is great. This is now getting into like the more advanced ways to practice that really make a big difference, right? All of this previous stuff is kind of just common sense, right? Like being specific with your practice, setting a measurable goal for the practice section, create a feedback loop, record yourself and see how you did. implementing targeted repetition, do it again, do it again, do it again until you get it right, and then do it again some more to get that new and improved version myelinated in your brain. Like that's basic practice. All right. Cool. So if you do nothing else, just do that. Now, this stuff is where it gets pretty intense. You can go down the rabbit hole with this. There were times when I would practice just as much as I was on closing calls, and my managers just hated it because I was not available for calls when they wanted to like scale their company, but I didn't give a shit. I just wanted to be more effective with my time and with my calls. So think of it like this. In any sort of high performance area in the world, career, profession, whatever, what is the ratio of practice to performance?
Like 90-10.
Or more, all right? As an example, when I was swimming, even the longest event that I really ever did was like 500 free. I do it in like, it's a 4-minute event, right? 4.5 minutes. I would practice for that for 7 hours a day and then have 4 minutes on the weekend when I'd swim it. Like it's stupid. It's a stupid amount of practice per performance. If you think about, musicians, right? The amount of time that they practice for the hour-long concert. And if you think about like soccer player or something, right? Stupid amount of practice per amount of performance time. F1 drivers can identify the track by just looking at it. And I even saw a video where like Verstappen wasn't even looking at it. He just felt it by hand. He felt the turns and he knew which track it was around the world out of like the 20 something tracks. Like it's the prep time, right? Anything where people are really the best at what they do, they prepare a massively outsized portion of their time when compared to the performance time. So just start getting this in your head. I'm not saying that like you should only take one call a day and then spend the rest of your day practicing or anything like that. But I will say that if you fucking did that, imagine how many days it would take for you to get really good. Like not nearly as many as if you're taking 8 calls a day, if you're really doing deliberate practice. All right. So visualization. Has anybody heard of visualization before outside of just like it being some sort of positive thinking or whatever? So visualization is neuroscience. So basically you visualize what's going to happen and your brain will activate just as much as if you were actually doing the thing. So like Brody was saying, the Blue Angels pilots sitting in the boardroom, they're not even in a fucking plane, but they're visualizing themselves in a brain or in a plane, and their brain will actually fire off the chemicals as if they were in the plane right then and there. All right, this is why future pace works. This is why the day in the life works. You're actually visualizing what it would be like right there in the present. All right, you're putting future you into present you. So this is something that I learned at the Olympic Training Center, among other places, of course, but this was really heavily taught at the Olympic Training Center as an absolute necessity. So you would spend 30 minutes of the practice time actually just visualizing. They would tell you like night before the meet, visualize. They would tell you when you step up to the blocks, like visualize. When you're waiting in the waiting area, visualize. Like it's a huge deal. It can actually grow your muscles. Like if you just visualize, this is wild. If you actually just visualize like lifting weights, you can literally grow your muscle mass. Crazy shit. All right. Neural efficiency, stress reduction, selective attention, confidence building. So basically all of these sorts of things, you can read through it on your own. But essentially by visualizing, you're becoming more familiar with successful conversations. You're becoming more familiar with unsuccessful conversations. And generally when you're more familiar with things, it means that you will have less stress when things don't go your way because like it actually is going your way. You've seen this movie a million times, right? You've seen how a sales call is going to play out good and bad. That's why like I hop on a sales call, I'm not stressed at all. There was a time where I was. The only difference is I've seen a million sales calls now. Like I know how they go. Not going to surprise me. Confidence building with that familiarity, selective attention with the mental radar, stress reduction, neural efficiency, all that sort of good stuff. So here's how to really set this up. Here's a step-by-step. All right. So first one is find a quiet place for 5 to 10 minutes. All right. Generally, the sweet spot for this is 7 minutes or more. You really don't want to go less than 7 minutes, but if you're on a time crunch, you still can. 7 minutes or more has the most effect. I think it's like 40% increase in effectiveness if you do 7 minutes as opposed to 5. So 7 minutes or more, sit down, take a couple deep breaths, and then start building your mental movie. All right. See yourself preparing for the call. See yourself starting the call. Hear your confident tonality. Hear your curious tone. Hear all the different things that you're going to be doing. Hear how you introduce yourself. Asking them, looks like you're calling in from XYZ location, whatever. Right? Visualize handling the objections, whatever it might be. Another key point with this is to not just visualize successful conversations. You want to also visualize roadblocks on the way to the successful conversation. So you don't want to just visualize the perfect sales call because that's not really going to happen. That doesn't build familiarity when people give you random shit on a real sales call. It means you'll be perfectly prepared to handle the perfect sales call and the perfect prospect. But Lord knows that ever happens. So imagine getting difficult objections. Imagine getting A-type prospects. Imagine getting people who just want to get to the point. Imagine getting people who have a million questions. Imagine people who go off on rants and you have to cut them off. Right? Visualize all of that stuff. And then the key is ending with success. Right? See the prospect agreeing to the next steps. Putting in the card numbers even. I can't tell you how many times I've visualized the actual checkout page on the offer that I'm working on at that time. Visualize a checkout page. Visualize yourself looking down at your keyboard, putting in the numbers as they read the numbers off to you, whatever it might be. And then this is really cool. So this is a physical anchor to this feeling and this state. This is something that your brain can do that's still is wild to me. But you can create a physical anchor for the current state. So you've just gone through this whole visualization process. Your brain is creating the chemicals that will be created in the real version of this when it happens. And that's all that your brain really is. It's electricity and chemicals, right? It's all that you are as a human being. It's kind of weird to think about. But you can anchor that state with some sort of physical feeling, whether it be, your hands flat on your desk in front of you, pressuring into the desk, whether it be pressing your thumb and your forefinger together, whether it be crossing your arms and leaning back in your chair, whatever you want to do. I don't care. You can stand on your head, up to you. But whatever you're doing there, you want to end your visualization exercise by doing that. And then you can use that physical anchor later to recall this feeling and recall this state. So if you feel yourself maybe getting anxious before a call for some reason, you just do this thing. And literally like magic, you will notice your brain chemistry changing. You'll feel differently. All right. But only if you practice. All right. The more times you do this, the more myelination happens and the more easily you'll be able to recall this stuff. All right. Make sense so far? Like I said, this stuff is kind of like a brain fuck, but it's effective brain fucks. All right. Just a tip on visualization, the more sensory detail that you can incorporate, the better, the more effective it becomes. So a sensory input is your 5 senses: visual, audio, feeling, smelling, and even tasting. So your posture in your chair, how you sit during an actual sales call. Are you standing? Are you sitting? Are you leaning forward? Are you leaning back? Are you hunched? Are you sitting up? Shoulders back, shoulders forward, whatever. Try to mimic that as much as possible. Facial expressions, same thing. Environment, if you're taking calls in the same office all the time, that's great. All those sorts of things. Even I use the same plug-in smell thing from Bath and Body Works in my office all the time. And I don't change it. It's an actual sensory input that now when I walk in my office, my entire state changes, not just because of the smell, but also, the fact that it is my office, this is where I work, this is where I take calls, all that kind of good stuff. But my entire state changes whenever I come into my office because of the smell, because of the visuals, because of the sounds, right? The sound of the fan, quiet. Maybe I have the window open. My entire state changes because of that. So you can literally craft this to be whatever you want. It could be a song even that you play in your headphones if you're like taking calls here and then taking calls at Starbucks or a cafe or, a family's house, whatever. You can just use a song if you want to, even to be able to increase this. Right? Yeah, here it is. So seven or more minutes, under 3 minutes doesn't really have a ton of effects. Use mental contrasting. So again, visualize success, but also overcoming obstacles along the way. Adopt a first-person perspective. This one is a little bit weird when you first start doing it if you're not used to it. Imagine yourself in first person living this rather than as a third person, like looking down on your life, if that makes sense. Right? Very, very different. First person, as if you're experiencing it here and now. And then practice consistently. 21 or more days is really what's been studied to show real, consistent, effective changes in habit building. If you've read like Atomic Habits, same studies are done there. All right. The goal is to maximize the return on your visualization time. So you're not just like sitting there, eyes closed for no fucking reason. Visualization is fairly woo-woo, but it works like hell. There's a reason Olympic athletes do it. All right. Next one is context recreation. So if you practice in an environment that's dramatically different from your actual sales environment, you're setting yourself up for transfer problems. So there is a concept called state-dependent learning. Basically, we remember information better when we're in the same environment as when we learned it. So literally, like in school, one of the things that I would do with this is study in the classroom where I would take the test, right? Kind of a weird thing to do, but it works, right? If you think about like home court advantage, home field advantage, if you've ever heard about that in sports, that's this. Because you're practicing on your home court where you're going to take the game, right? You're playing the game where you practiced for hours. You know it. This is your place. So not only will it reduce your performance anxiety, but it will also reduce that practice performance gap. All right. So you have to take note of where you are actually taking calls. Like, where is your performance environment right now? Is it at your desk in your office? Is it at the kitchen counter? I know I was taking calls at the kitchen counter for the longest time. Is it, in your bedroom with your desk in the corner? Like, is it out on the balcony? Is it in Starbucks? Can't tell you how many calls I've taken from Starbucks. The reason I did Starbucks specifically too, and not like other cafes, because Starbucks has the same vibe, same music, same colors, same smells. Like, that wasn't on accident. Starbucks coffee kind of fucking sucks, honestly. But the environment's the exact same. So I know I can go to any Starbucks and be immediately in state, right? Technology, your devices. Are you on a laptop? You're on a desktop, standing, sitting, posture, time of day. If you're used to taking calls in the morning, in the evening, whatever. Time pressure. You have 45 minutes to take calls. Do you have 30? Do you have an hour? As many of these things as you can take note of is like, this is the norm when I'm taking sales calls. The goal is going to be to recreate that when you practice. All right. Background noise, interruptions, all that stuff as well. All right. So just mirror what you're doing. If you are practicing in a different place than when you actually take the calls, try to make it as much the same as humanly possible. Because again, it's just going to trigger that myelination that's already occurred and get you in state. And then whatever you learn in this environment is going to transfer a ton better. All right. I think that's it for that one. Oh, yeah. Realistic distractions is the next one. This can even come down to when you practice. So like, Eduardo, even when you record yourself practicing, like have Zoom open on your computer. Have your CRM open if you take notes in the CRM. If you take notes on a pad of paper, like have that next to you. Even, maybe you keep Slack open and have that on your screen while you're taking calls. Whatever it might be, as much as you can mimic that, the better. All right. Realistic distractions. Basically just don't practice in perfect silence. If you're in a place where you're taking calls and it's completely silent, like I still wouldn't necessarily practice without distractions or in complete silence because there can be things that happen on calls. Somebody knocks at the door, kid falls down the fucking stairs. I don't know. So any sort of distractions that could come up, try practicing even with those. So it could be background noise, like go onto YouTube and pull up coffee shop background noise or whatever, put on headphones and have that going while you practice, right? Time pressure of a sales call is real. This is something really good for you guys to do. I've done it plenty where like I've got this timer here on my desk. I'll set a timer, even though like during my practice session, there's already a timer set for the full practice session. But like if I'm role playing or something, I'll just know that I only have a certain amount of time to handle this objection before my next call is going to show up. So may as well practice that, right? So that's it for context recreation. Any questions on that? Is this interesting to you guys at all? Is this boring as hell?
Yeah. No, this is good. Yeah, I mean, I've found that it's super easy to jump into a course, but like actually learning how to practice and put those things into practice is not only is it powerful, like I've never really done the visualization part of it. Although I do remember like last summer, I had a closing call on a Monday and I had seen a clip from Josh Lyons, I think, talking about exactly that, like visualizing the next day. And I did, and I visualized the guy saying, let's go ahead, and literally verbatim, like word for word, how I pictured it happening. It happened. Like I almost like went slack jawed in the call. I was like, oh, damn. Okay. Yeah, let's get your information. Yeah. So this is
there's
really good.
Even more. There's even more crazy shit that goes on with this that I'm not even telling you guys. It's wild. Like even quantum physics. Like there's some crazy shit about how the world works that it's wild, but good stuff, dude. I love it.
It also reminds me, like I used to teach music, like teach drums, and I would always tell my students, like, I'd rather you practice 15 minutes a day than 2 hours straight on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Right. That makes that stuff better. Yeah.
Even just air drumming is better than no drums at all.
Yeah. Also super cool.
Cool. Chris?
Yeah, it made me think of when I play golf. I'm like, oh man, if I think I'm gonna hit this in the water, it's going in the freaking water, or hey, I'm about to hit the green, and it hits the green.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I hit it in the water. I grew up when I was like 13 through when I went to college. I was staying with my parents. They lived on a golf course, and the hole that they lived on, there is a massive waterway between the fairway and the green. I swear I'd hit like 100 balls in there. It's just so bad. I was like, God damn. Very cool. Let's keep going, you guys. So next concept is called progressive context loading. All right. So this is basically taking the distractions and stuff that we were talking about, but also you're doing it on a mental level. So there's also progressive mental loading. So this can be distractions or it can be cognitive load in other ways. So progressive cognitive loading is what I'll refer to it as because like that's what I know it as. Progressive cognitive loading is basically the idea that you start with very minimal cognitive load, aka like mental brain power, and then you work your way up and then you get rid of it completely. All right? So think about it this way. If you're a runner, I want you to put on 1 pound ankle weights and go run once around the track. And then I want you to put on 5 pound ankle weights and go run around the track. It's going to be a lot fucking harder. And then I want you to put on 10 pound ankle weights and go run around the track. That's going to be like god awful. But then I want you to take them off. Imagine how great it feels when you take them off and how much more powerful your running will be. Right? That's kind of the goal of this is if you introduce this sort of, context load, whether it be distractions like background noise or time pressure or notifications on your phone while your friend's just texting you every 5 minutes, whatever it might be, and that just increasingly goes up and then you get rid of it, it's going to feel like this massive weight is lifted off your shoulders. You will have practiced with more distractions, which means that you'll be able to operate under cognitive load even more. And it just means that you're going to do really well compared to what you were doing before, right? So you can do environmental triggers for this. You can do physical cognitive load type things. I think I did this later on. Let me see. Yeah, cognitive overloading. So I won't go too deep into this because we'll go over it later. But that's essentially what this is, right? Progressive context loading. So context loading is specifically distractions, noise, the way that your setup is run, all that kind of good stuff. All right. Environmental triggers. All right. Next one, recording and analysis were great. This is basically how I've found works really, really well when going over recordings. You can analyze a lot of different things with your recordings, but this works really, really well for your basic communication skills. So audibly, the words that you use, and non-verbally with the body language you have, the facial expressions, hand gestures, all that kind of good stuff, right? So when you record a practice session, you can go back and rewatch the recording and do it 4 different times. You want to rewatch it 4 times. The first one is just basic content analysis. So the way that you can do this is potentially record your sales pitch and look at the actual words that you said. Were you clear in the word choices that you used? Were you confusing? Did you structure sentences in a way that made sense, that flowed well, right? All those sorts of things, the actual content of the words that you used. Pass number 2 is then going to be where you turn off the video, or you close your eyes, or you look away, right? Just turn around with your notepad, and then you just listen. You listen to your words, the delivery of them, the confidence, the tonality that you had, the cadence, the pauses, the melody, all those sorts of things to say, how could this come across better, just audibly? The next one is then to turn off the audio and just watch. What were your facial expressions? How was your eye contacts? How was your posture? Hand gestures, all that stuff. And then last but not least is prospect analysis. When you watch back the recording, if you're able to see the prospects, then analyzing where they were most engaged, where you noticed maybe some nonverbal communication with their body language about hesitations, or maybe how they reacted to certain things that you said, places where their energy shifted, so that you actually know, oh, I said this thing, and out of 10 calls, 9 people recoiled a little bit. They sat back and they crossed their arms. Maybe I should take that out of my fucking pitch, right? People don't really like it. Or maybe there's this part that everybody leans in and they're smiling and they're nodding like they're with you. Like maybe emphasize that a little bit more. All right. Does that make sense? 4 passes. It's simple. You just got to remember to freaking do it.
And Christian, is that on an actual closed call, or we're doing a mock call with ourselves and going through it?
Both.
Gotcha.
Both. Yep. For each analysis pass, so for each of those things, content, audio, video, and prospects, you also want to do 4 sub kind of groups, if you will. So for the content, what went well, what could be improved, what one change would create the biggest improvement, and then how will I implement that change? So you do that for like the content of the pitch as an example. Like, oh, this wasn't very clear. I think the biggest change that I could implement was rewording this so that it comes across more clearly and with less confusion from the prospect. How will I implement that? Well, I'm going to rewrite it right now, right? Maybe audibly, what went well? Oh, this sounded really smooth. I liked how I said that thing, blah, 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 blah. What could be improved? 3 specific weaknesses. I ended all of my sentences with upspeak. It just sounded like everything was a question. And so there was no confidence. And so then the prospect didn't really like what I was saying. And so then they had a million questions at the end. It's like, what one change would create the biggest improvement? Maybe just going down at the end of each sentence instead of going up. How I implement that, I'm going to practice it right now. 15, 20 times, record it, go back, do it again, record it, go back, do it again. Oh, that one was good. Let's do that 20 to 30 times, solidify that, and we're good. Probably never have to go back and practice that goddamn thing again. Cool. So do this for each of those 4 passes. The science on this one is quite alarming. I don't know if I put the actual stats in here. I don't think I did. They are in the videos that I put in school in the Start Here course. But comparative recording, oh, it is here. God, I just missed it. It's right there. 40% improvement by literally just taking the newest recording of a good version and comparing it to the original bad one. Literally just side-by-side comparison gives you a 40% lift from the research that's been done. That's fucking wild to me. Brody?
So when you say the new and improved version, what we've been working on with the multi-pass, when you say the not so good version, is that like the actual, like, let's say we're reviewing a sales call. Is that the sales call we need to compare it with? So the OG, okay.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yep. So go ahead.
Sorry, I know at one point you were on like a crazy amount of offers, right? And so kind of having said that, like, is there certain things, and I know you commit to the same process, so I assume, would you just practice the generic form of that or whatever offer that you were working on like at the time, if that makes sense?
Great question. I'd practice all things. Like even if I'm not on an offer for it, I'm gonna practice it. So like making a fitness sale as an example, I wasn't on a ton of fitness offers, but I'd still practice it. I would start with practicing the offer that you're on because that's going to be the most tactical. And then once you get to the place where that's really good, then you want to start imagining other scenarios because not only will that then solidify the learning and you'll be able to apply it more to like what you are doing, but then it will also make it more transferable to other things later on. But start with where you are now and then branch out. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So yeah, record your original performance, practice your improvements, record the new version, compare the 2 recordings side by side, and then notate any sort of specific differences in terms of content delivery, the audio, the visual, prospects, reactions, all that kind of good stuff. All right, we will keep going. 26 out of 36. We're getting there. Cognitive overloading. So this is what I started to mention earlier. This is specifically increasing mental demands during practice so that the actual performance feels easier. All right. Navy SEALs use this as well as many, many other high performers. They'll literally just up the pressure in order to learn better. All right. Now, the key point with this is not to up the pressure past your threshold to where you're just like fucking stressed out, right? But up the pressure enough to just make it harder to focus. These are all the different reasons that it works. You can screenshot it if you want. Articulation and verbal fluency techniques, build verbal agility here. So there's a couple of different ways that we do this. If you've ever heard me run through an objection handle at 10 times speed, I get practice out of that, right? By overloading on the speed, just doing things as quickly as humanly possible, then when you go back to normal speed, it'll feel so much easier, right? Articulation challenges. If you have a pen or a pencil, you just put it between your teeth and see if people can still understand you. That's all. That's even a really thick fucking pen. Usually a pencil will do. All right, put it between your teeth so your lips can go around it, but your teeth can't really go up and down. Like you can't open your mouth anymore. But it will help you articulate your consonants quite a bit more. It's the reason I'm very clear when I speak, right? This is great if you have an accent as well. Great way to practice overcoming that. Rhythm disruption. Deliver your pitch while tapping an irregular beat. So this is basically just throwing off any sort of like rhythm that your mind might be going through as you're talking and separates your speaking brain from the rest of your brain, right? Calibrated background noise. So kind of talked about this before, but basically just increasing environmental sounds. One thing that I really love to do personally is I've got my vibe board over there, but I've always had like some sort of TV or something in my office with a Chromecast or whatever that I can be putting on distractions for myself to practice. So maybe it's putting on the news. Maybe it's a Mr. Beast video, something to just be both audio and visual distractions. And it can also kind of be pattern interruption if it's something that you're actually interested in, but you're choosing not to like focus on, all right, while you practice. So again, this is just so that you can have more selective attention and be able to focus on what you need to focus on at any given time. Memory and mental agility techniques. Dual task interference is the idea that you can do something while doing something else. So this is basically multitasking. It's great for practice, bad for performance, right? So don't be multitasking while you're on a sales call, but absolutely multitask while you are practicing, but do it for the purpose, like let your brain know that it's on purpose to be able to practice more. That's the key, right? If your brain doesn't actually make the delineation that this is for the purpose of practicing better, then it's just going to retain less knowledge about the thing that you're trying to practice and like get better at. So it's not going to work, right? You got to know. Reverse order practice. Instead of pitching phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, pitch phase 3, phase 2, phase 1. Instead of going through the call from opening question through to cost of an action, work backwards from cost of an action. All right. See how well you actually know your shit. You might find this to be really hard. That's like saying the alphabet backwards, right? To be QPO, still got it. Can still do it. So like just practice doing things backwards instead of just forwards, and you'll be surprised how much better you do things forwards. Delay insertion. So this is just like good sales practice anyway. Just pause for a couple of seconds before you answer. All right. Party trick. Yeah, it is. Let's see here. Progressive loading system. So cognitive loading gradually. So this is kind of what I mentioned earlier. You want to progressively load and not just do like everything at once. So practice a mild technique while you're pitching. Let's say like you want to practice your pitch, right? You want to make sure that it really rolls off the tip of your tongue, that you deliver it effectively, smoothly, with confidence, clarity, and authority. While you pitch and while you practice reading your pitch to somebody on the other side, try just like, let's say like rub your belly and pat your head. Like you guys ever seen that? Just see how well you can run your pitch or how well you can communicate with somebody while doing this. Obviously, don't do that on a sales fucking call, but when you're practicing, right? You role play with somebody else, like just tell them, hey, I'm going to do this while we role play. They can be like, what the hell's the matter with you? But if they're from the dojo and they're seeing this, they know. And then for moderate loading, maybe start jumping up and down on one foot while you do that and while you pitch, right? And for advanced loading, maybe you jump up and down on one foot, turning around while you do that, while you pitch. And then for the recovery practice, you return back to normal. You just sit and you pitch. It's going to feel like such a breeze, right? And that's going to come across in your communication. All right. Again, the goal is not to overwhelm yourself. The goal is to just provide enough for your brain to be slightly overloaded. All right. Critical contrast phase. This is basically just the very ending phase where I mentioned that we go back to normal. This is why this is important. So, and this is how to do it. So practice under the load, the progressive load, level 1, level 2, level 3, and then come back and immediately practice the same material under normal conditions. Notice how much easier, more fluent your performance feels, and record that normal condition practice. And then that's what you compare to your baseline recording. All right. You'll notice a really big difference. And this is why it brings, I think it was 40% lift just by comparing the new version to the old version, like that simple active comparison. The reason it makes such a big difference is because your brain is seeing the difference. Your brain is noticing intentionally how much better this new version is from the old one. And because of that, it is more quick basically to myelinate that neural connection. Does that make sense? You're giving a feedback loop to your brain that's like, hey, this thing worked. Let's do it again. All right. Finding your optimal challenge level. Too little obviously doesn't really stimulate very much. Too much just impairs your cognitive processing. So make it challenging, but not frustrating. Declining performance over practice accessory. Yeah, just these are signs that you're not doing enough or you're doing too much. Inability to complete the task, declining performance over practice time, excessive frustration, or if it doesn't even feel hard, that's how you know that you're not doing enough. All right. So this is what I would do. if I were starting out with this. And if you're going into a new role, if you're going into a new type of sale that you've never done before, if you are learning a new part of the sales call, maybe if you're completely rewiring your sales process, a new pitch, maybe whatever it might be. Week 1 is the deliberate practice fundamentals, which was like that 4 steps all the way at the beginning about being specific with your practice, setting aside the time, setting a goal, all those sorts of things. Week 2 is then starting your visualization practice. Week 3 is context recreation. Week 4 is now where we're finally starting to record. And then week 5 is introducing this unnecessary complexity, basically, with the cognitive loading. So like, this is very intentionally written in this order. Okay, so deliberate practice, visualization, context recreation, recording analysis. At this point, like you've got a pretty good handle on this new skill. You've been practicing it for a fucking month, very intentionally. And then after that, you can stress test yourself, all right? But no need to stress test yourself if you don't know how to fucking do the thing in the first place and do it well. Otherwise, you're going to be stress testing and you're going to be getting off of your technique, if you will. And then you're practicing bad habits. Make sense? Cool. Here's what I would do today. You can take a screenshot of this or take a picture with your phone or whatever. When you finish your day today, end a little early, work on this, or work on it tomorrow, work on it this weekend, something like that. Figure out how you want to do each of these things. So figure out what the first skill that you want to focus on is. I would choose whatever you feel like you're struggling with at the most at the moment. Choose that skill. Schedule out a couple of practice sessions this week. Don't like go crazy. Don't be that person that immediately goes and practices for 6 hours a day and then never practices again. Do whatever you need to make it consistent, like we're building a habit. Figure out what you want your recording system to be. If you want it to be your phone, if you want it to be Zoom recording with a Fathom and like just record with just you in the room or with other people role playing, whatever it might be. Create your tracking document for your practice sessions where you're tracking how you did before, scale of 1 to 10, how you did afterwards, scale of 1 to 10, tracking the things that you want to, like with the audio and the visual stuff. How's my tone? How's my cadence? How are my pauses? How's my melody? Visually, how are my gestures? How are my facial expressions? And then work on your first deliberate practice session, ideally within the next 24 hours, because all this stuff is still fresh, but up to you.
If you've been in sales for years and you are not where you thought you would be by now, you know this is the career for you. You are not looking for a way out, but the frustration of still being stuck after all this time is incredibly real. If you are tired of feeling like you should be further along than you are, if you got into sales for freedom, not to feel stuck, right? If what you want is to actually make the breakthrough that turns this career into everything that you knew it could be. If you are ready to stop being stuck and commit to actually getting there, click the first link in the description. It's also pinned in the comments. And regardless, I will see you every single day at 5 p.m. Eastern, right after you've taken your calls for the day, with content that is laser targeted towards making you a closer capable of making $20, $30, even more $1,000 a month, every single month consistently, removing the anxiety and the stress and giving you the freedom that you always wanted.